man-made God. A short history of the West. It is commonly believed that monotheism, with its focus on the divine, is a recent development in the world's religions, an invention of late antiquity and the early Middle Ages. Yet many of the world's religions were in fact monotheistic long before the time of Jesus. The sacred books of Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism, and many others are clearly monotheistic. The gods and goddesses of ancient Mesopotamia are not even divine. They are demigods, semi-divine, or even mortal humans who have attained the status of a god. They are like the Greek and Roman heroes, who are often deified after death. Gods and goddesses have human foibles, and the world they rule over is full of the sort of human drama we find in Shakespeare and Sophocles. The ancient Hebrews were no exception. They too had demigods, such as Baal and Asherah, and they too had goddesses like Anat. Nor were they the only ancient people to have gods who were mere humans. In Assyria there was Teshub, who is usually translated the storm god, but who was probably the same deity as the Assyrian king Teshup. Zeus is a good example of a god who is more powerful than most mortals, but who was also once a human king. The Bible describes him as the son of Jupiter, the sky god, but other texts identify him as the son of the chief god of the Greek pantheon, Zeus himself. In fact, it appears that all the chief gods of Greek mythology are actually just different aspects of the single Zeus, or the single supreme god of Olympus. As the centuries passed, the monotheism of the Hebrews gradually grew into a theism that was more monolithic than those of other religions. As time went by, the Hebrews increasingly came to believe that their God was not merely the highest of all the gods, but the highest of all beings, the only one. This belief gradually became central to Judaism. This process culminated in the Jewish-Christian religion of the Hebrews, which eventually became known as Christianity. The Hebrew Christian God is called the Jehovah, or Lord, in English, and he is often simply called Yahweh, or Heaven. The Hebrews believed that their God had created heaven and earth, but had never created any other being or thing. He had created humans so that they could be his slaves and do his will on earth. For a time this was enough. But eventually humans became dissatisfied with their God and began to question his authority. This led to the development of what is called the biblical eschatology. In this system, a group of humans, usually Jews, will have the opportunity to leave this world behind and enter a world beyond. There, they will live forever in perfect peace and happiness. But if they refuse this opportunity, then they will have to spend eternity in torment in this world. The Hebrews did not invent the idea of eternal punishment for rejecting God. They simply adapted it from the earlier Zoroastrian belief that the wicked will be punished eternally. The Hebrews also adapted the idea from earlier Egyptians, Assyrians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, and Babylonians. All of these peoples believed that those who had died without converting to their own religion would go to an eternal hell or paradise, depending on the beliefs they held during their lifetime. The Hebrews believed that God's chosen people, the Jews, were special because he had chosen them out of all the nations of the world to receive his laws, his commandments. The commandments were supposed to be laws that would allow humanity to live a happy life here on earth, so that the wicked would not be punished. They also were supposed to be laws that would lead humanity to God's paradise after death. But some of the commandments were not so much laws as they were social rules. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, etc. The Hebrews believed that they were the people God had chosen to receive his laws, but they also believed that they were the people closest to God, so that they would be able to understand his commands best. The Jews therefore believed that their God had given them commandments that were very easy to follow. When people failed to obey these commandments, then their own fault was to blame, and their punishment would be their own responsibility. This led to the Hebrew idea of individual responsibility. If one disobeyed God's law, then God would punish one. But the punishment would be one's own responsibility. This led to the Hebrew idea of individual free will. It was believed that people had the choice of following God's laws or not. It was believed that all the laws God gave the Jews were intended for them alone. They were not meant to apply to anyone else. If any other nation received the laws and decided not to follow them, then God would punish them for their disobedience. This led to the Hebrew idea of racial exclusivism. All other people, and indeed all other species, were considered unclean animals and were forbidden to enter the Temple Mount or even to come near it. It was also believed that all people outside the Jewish faith were destined for eternal punishment after death. This led to a hatred of all other people and a sense of racial superiority among the Hebrews. They believed that all non-Jews were condemned to spend eternity in hell, and they did not want to share their paradise with anyone else. The idea of a God who judges humanity impartially and rewards some and punishes others with eternal damnation seems at odds with common sense. How can any God be fair and just if he makes some people suffer forever?